I do it like record, like it's like something's gonna happen if I don't do it. Maybe I'm just being. I hope I'm not using this term incorrectly, and that it's okay for me to say. Maybe I'm just being a couillon.
Hey, where you heard that?
What is that? I don't even know.
Yeah,
it's like a dumbass.
Yeah,
like a couillon, like a simpleton. I don't know what to.
I like that.
Can it also be like endearing, like you damn couillon or something like that?
Absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's like, you can say it. Like you can call me. I'll let.
You're giving us the couillon pass.
Yeah.
You get the couillon. Right. Like other Cajuns can call each other that. When it comes from north of I-10, it sounds a little different, but like you're an ally, so you can absolutely call me couillon. I ain't mad.
Oh, it's an honor, man. It's an honor. Pleasure to be an ally to the community.
Yeah.
You know what it is? There's a guy. I've been. I don't know. I think I've just been starved for social gatherings, and so the TikTok algorithm has figured out that I'm like into crawfish boils.
Oh,
so I'm just so I get a lot of that stuff, and I think the word snuck in there somewhere. Like somebody said it.
Yeah. I'm a big crawfish boiler. I boil all kind of seafood. I mean, actually, I was telling Shane I had some trouble last night because I boil everything outside, but I didn't have that much shrimp like I usually use outside, and I boiled it inside, so I really didn't know how much spices to use, and I used like way fucking too many.
Blew yourself up, huh?
Yeah. So I'm not doing great physically.
Just hot, spicy shrimp. In the middle of summer.
Yes.
Oh man, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I remember going somewhere on the Gulf Coast. Can't recall if it was East Texas or Louisiana or something, where I just went to a place that had, it was crawfish. It was just a restaurant where they had crawfish, and it was particularly spicy. I don't know if it was that place or it was that day or that batch where they did or whatever, but I just sat there like speechless for like 25 minutes and just like constantly eating and just like sniffling and eyes pouring and just going for it. Fuck, it's good, man.
It's so good. Like the juice rubs, it runs down your forearms. Mm-hmm. You got snot. Your eyes get watery, but you don't stop because it doesn't make any sense to stop and clean yourself because the next you're getting juicy and gross right after that. So you gotta just power through and then you clean up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
man. Fuck, I miss that shit.
If y'all ever take this show on the road and you hit the South,
buddy,
I will throw y'all a crawfish boil,
buddy. Yeah. Oh man,
I will respectfully stand around you guys while you eat the crawfish, but I will not be. I don't. As it is, I have to like shower after my meals, just from my own physicality, not anything to do with the food. Okay, it's just like suffering and wheezing and panting and sweat in the dead of winter. That's just the moisture coming out of all of my pores as I'm trying to eat like a frozen stromboli or whatever it is at 3 a.m. So I don't need an additional challenge while I'm eating.
None of the extra stuff.
Yeah.
Man, the Louisiana cuisine is just like, it really does it for me. It took me a while to wrap my head around. I'm trying to remember where it was that I was. It was somewhere on the Gulf Coast or whatever, and I think it was like maybe late February or early March, and somebody had a king cake.
Oh yeah, that's for Mardi Gras. Yeah,
and I remember them like cutting it or something, and the fucking plastic baby, came out of it. To the listener, for those that don't know,
to me, what the fuck are you saying?
Yeah, also me. Yeah.
How would you describe this, bro? It's like I don't know the mythology behind it.
Little plastic naked baby, like the size of like the smallest fetus you could probably legally abort in this country, like a little bitty guy. So you take.
Is it a Jesus or is it just a baby? Is it just a regular
baby with no clothes on?
Okay.
Yeah, and they shove it in the cake, and the idea is they chop it into slices, and whoever gets the slice with the baby in it has to buy the next king cake. Because the way Mardi Gras works is like you buy a king cake every week. So like in the office, like if you work in an office or always Monday is king cake day. So like whoever gets the baby that day brings the cake the next day. So you don't want the baby. But then they started like they had some kind of lawsuit. I think somebody choked to death or something. So they have to. They sell the baby separate.
Yeah, it seems like that's.
Yeah, they sell the baby separate, and then you gotta smuggle the baby in there, which is weird because like this is all kind of like under like Catholicism somehow because of like Mardi Gras and like all that. So you wouldn't think the Catholic Church would be about this kind of weird optics. Like they would have gotten rid of that.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
That's a hell of an obituary.
Yeah.
I like the idea in my head of like you go to the bakery and then outside the bakery is a guy in like a trench coat and as you like leave with the cake he like opens up the trench coat. He's like, you want to get a baby? I got what flavor? What type? What size? I got it all.
Yeah,
I gotta look at
it. They don't have eyes though. It's like the baby with just the goo face. Yeah, man, they don't have a face. It's like
I'm looking it up.
Yeah.
It's weird, man.
Yeah, it's like no face.
Weird.
Yeah,
you could buy it as a 12-piece Mardi Gras king cake babies, 12 pieces, $8.99 on Amazon.
$8.99.
I can't. Yeah,
it's a good price.
Oh, it is Jesus. It is.
Oh, the baby's supposed to be Jesus?
It's supposedly, yeah. It says, here's why there's a plastic baby Jesus hiding inside your king cake. It's a Huffington Post.
Baby.
It's fake news. HuffPost. I don't know. They could be wrong.
We'll make it a goal, Elron, that next year we'll all be eating cake babies together.
Cake babies. Come, yes. Yeah.
Next year, south of I-10.
Come on down. Unlimited king cakes. Crawfish. Yeah, because that's crawfish season too. Crawfish season is like, it's pretty much over now. They get too big and too hard and you can't really fuck with them. They get unruly, like you can't really like, you got to get them when their shells are softer. They peel better. That's
sitting down with a nice abita.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you drank that. Look, Dwight, you know so much about down here.
I spent a good amount of time in Louisiana.
Yeah, you can definitely call me a couillon. Like, all right, yeah.
Now, when I was a young boy, about the age of 5, my teachers taught me I could be the greatest man alive. They told me I could change the world, be whatever I wanted to be. There was no one in the world like me. Every one of us was so unique. I'd not be an average man. No, sir, I'd be no average man. So I had those big dreams.
Welcome back, everyone, to Eat the Rich. This is a show about our political economy, late-stage capitalism, and the millionaires, billionaires, and multinational corporations hell-bent on staving off its death rattle. I'm Dwight, and today we have with us Shane.
Hello.
That's very nice. We've got Chris.
Howdy.
And welcoming back to the show, I mean, a real friend, a real good buddy of the show, and I'm sure everybody's going to be pleased to have him on, Elron Mexico. Welcome.
What's up? I'm bringing that back. I'm bringing it back.
It's gone through its cycle of like, distaste and then irony, and now it's cool
nostalgia.
Again, so that's
it's packaged back too. Yeah, it's coming back.
That's good to know. Man, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank y'all.
Again, it's always a pleasure.
I'm glad to be here. I love hanging out with y'all.
And it was a bit timely, I suppose, because, we lost one of the greats recently, and we thought, no better of a friend to come join us to fucking put our heads around this thing than to discuss John McAfee. Jesus Christ.
I think on one of the earlier episodes you came on, Elron, you said something like we deserve better enemies. And like McAfee is that.
Yeah.
I think he is the better enemy. You know what I mean? Like he's such like a weird, I don't know, like Bond villain kind of maniac.
Yes.
And for the record too, like you put that in our heads, that phrase, we deserve better enemies. And it has been like repeated by many, many people. I really appreciate you saying that.
As recently, I believe, as like last week, I think you brought that up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you distill. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like such a large concept that just needs to be distilled into one biting commentary. And I think that says it a lot. And Shane, you're entirely right too. Like, John McAfee is the fucking enemy that we needed. At least that had some humor in this shit.
Right. I mean, me and you, Elron, we were chatting before we started recording about how, this is like what you would kind of picture a horrible, decadent, rich monster to do on the surface, right? Like all of his obscene kind of displays and like shamelessness of like, I'm a millionaire, I could do whatever the fuck I want. I'm just gonna party and go and just be publicly insane as much as I want, as opposed to, a lot of the other types of guys that we profile in here who are they'll have more money than God, and then, it's like the Warren Buffett thing that I mentioned, it's like, then being like, oh, I live in a modest 2-room house. Like, that's in a weird way, that's like more suspicious. It's like, then why get the money?
Yeah, what are you going with it? You're just hoarding it so other people don't have it. You're not even enjoying it. So, what's the fucking point? It's almost like just to punish us. And like McAfee, he didn't have the veneer of all the other rich people who still own stuff. And I think that was the difference. He didn't own a company anymore that was still exploiting. So his exploitation, the violence he did was more direct from person to person, Whereas Bill Gates, he'll just sign a piece of paper and 8 million or 8,000 guys in some other country starve to death or catch a disease they shouldn't catch. But he's doing it with a briefcase or whatever. John McAfee's just, eating shit from a hammock and shooting a machine gun at people. He's different.
I guess we pulled that Band-Aid off.
I should have waited for that. I mean, I can't stop thinking about that. Anyway, yeah, he's he's the guy we because he's there. He's you could get your hands on him. You could shake that motherfucker. You could get him. It feels like we could. The other guys almost seem like they've diffused their the way they exploit through capitalism. So with such fluidity, they're almost grasping at ghosts. Where McAfee was a guy if you could get him if you could get in a room with him. But I don't know.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
That's the Clinton crime family.
So I guess we should just start here, Chris. Let's get into this guy. I mean, what's his deal? What's his origin story?
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, getting into his early life a little bit, just to sort of set things up. He was born in England in 1945, actually on a U.S. Army base to an American father and a British mother. And this I actually didn't know. I didn't know he grew up in Virginia. He moved to Salem, Virginia, when he was a little kid, right outside of Roanoke, and that's where he was raised primarily. Was in Salem, Virginia. That's where he went to college originally for his undergrad and stuff like that. So, but his childhood is, to hear him describe it, his childhood was troubled. He's described his father as abusive and an alcoholic, and his father also committed suicide when John McAfee was 15. So then he goes to Roanoke College for his undergrad, which is in Salem, Virginia. There he gets a bachelor's degree in mathematics in 1967, and then he moves to Monroe, Louisiana, to attend Northeast Louisiana State College to pursue a PhD, but he was then expelled in 1968 for having sex with an undergrad that he was mentoring, who would then become his first wife.
Wow.
And by this point, he's especially after his childhood and his father's suicide stuff. I mean, he's drinking heavily, and he's you hear him talk about it, selling drugs and using drugs, and all throughout the late 60s through the mid 80s, and he takes a series of programming jobs over the next 2 decades. He's at NASA's Institute for Space Studies from 1968 to 1972, working on the Apollo program, and then from there goes to UNIVAC and then Xerox. In 1978, he joined Computer Sciences Corporation as a software consultant, and then he worked for the consulting firm Booz Allen Hamilton from 1980 to 1982, and then Lockheed after that. And he claims during this period, he's he's like taking LSD like every day before going into work, and like doing like DMT and cocaine and stuff like that. And he says he got sober in 1984 and then stayed that way from then on. There's actually a little bit here I wanted to read though from this Wired article. He gave this interview to Wired in 2012 when he like first fled police, as we'll get into, and like he started like kind of ginning up a bunch of media coverage of himself back around this period. But he gave an interview to Wired where he talks about this time period a little bit. And just to read from that here, it says, McAfee started drinking heavily his first year at Roanoke College and supported himself by selling magazine subscriptions door to door. He would knock and announce that the lucky resident had won an absolutely free subscription. All they had to do was pay a small shipping and handling fee. And quote, this is quoting McAfee here. So in fact, I am explaining to them why it's not free and why they're going to pay for it, but the ruse worked, McAfee recalls.
So crazy.
He learned that confidence was all that mattered, which is sales, that type of shit, absolutely. He smiled, fixed them with his penetrating, blue-eyed gaze, and hit them with a nonstop stream of patter. I made a fortune, he says. And this is one thing that you can definitely tell for fucking any interview with McAfee or like any kind of video footage of him, is he's sort of like a master salesman, just like of not just any company he's been a part of, but like also himself and this image he creates for himself that he's like selling to the public to gin up publicity and stuff. It goes on to say here he spent his money on booze, but managed to graduate and start a PhD in mathematics at Northeast Louisiana State College in 1968. He got kicked out for sleeping with one of his undergraduate students, whom he later married, and ended up coding old school punch card programs for Univac in Bristol, Tennessee. He was arrested for buying marijuana around that same period of time, and says though his lawyer got him off without a conviction, he was summarily fired. Says still he had learned enough to gin up an impressive, totally fake resume and used it to get a job at Missouri Pacific Railroad in St. Louis. It was 1969 and the company was attempting to use an IBM computer to schedule trains. After 6 months, McAfee's system began to churn out optimized train routing patterns. Unfortunately, he had also discovered LSD. He would drop acid in the morning, go to work, and route trains all day.
Living the dream.
Yeah, man. One morning,
sounds so bad.
One morning, he decided to experiment with another psychedelic called DMT. He did a line, felt nothing, and decided to snort a whole bag of the orangish powder. Quote, within an hour, my mind was shattered, McAfee says. It says people asked him questions, but he didn't understand what they were saying. The computer was spitting out train schedules to the moon. He couldn't make sense of it. He ended up behind the garbage can in downtown St. Louis, hearing voices and desperately hoping that nobody would look at him. It says he never went back to Missouri Pacific. Part of him believes he's still on that trip, that everything since has been one giant hallucination, and that one day he'll snap out of it and find himself back on his couch in St. Louis.
Wow.
Damn.
And it says from then he felt like he was always one step away from a total breakdown, which finally came in Omax in 1983. He was snorting lines of coke off his desk most mornings, polishing off a bottle of scotch every day, and living in constant fear that he would run out of drugs. Oh, buddy. His wife had left him. He'd given away his dog, and in the wake of what he calls a mutual agreement, he left Omax. He ended up shuttered in his house with no friends, doing drugs alone for days on end, and wondering whether he should kill himself just as his father had. My life was total hell, he says. Finally, he went to a therapist who suggested he go to Alcoholics Anonymous. He attended a meeting and started sobbing. Someone gave him a hug and told him he wasn't alone. And then he claims, at least in 2012, to have been sober ever since. I don't know how true that necessarily is, or if that was true beyond 2012. I'm not totally sure. But it's like at this time, like he gets sober supposedly in 1984, and then he's like working at Lockheed, and then it's 1986 when he's working at Lockheed Martin when he first becomes aware of computer viruses for the first time. The brain virus was the one, like the big one that had come out of Pakistan. It was like targeted towards like IBM personal computers, and like this was like really the first big virus, the first time anybody had heard of a virus for like personal computers and stuff like that. And so to read a little bit more here from another article real quick, I just want to, this is about him, starting McAfee. It says, despite his troubles, McAfee managed to land a job at defense contractor Lockheed Martin, where he worked on a classified voice recognition program. Then he came across an unusual bit of self-replicating code designed to copy itself onto any floppy disk inserted into affected computers. When examined, it contained the message, "Welcome to the dungeon. Beware of this virus."
Wow.
This is quoting a little bit more from McAfee here. It says, when I first read about the Pakistani brain virus, I'd never heard of a virus before. Neither had anyone in technology. It fascinated me. He worked out a way to disinfect the computers and then spread the cure via the bulletin board system, a precursor to the web. The challenge inspired him to set up a business of his own, McAfee Associates, a firm that would later be sold years after he'd left to Intel for more than $7.6 billion. I says, there's another quote here from him. It says, I knew the field would become extremely large because people being who they are, there will always be hackers, he says. It's why we have graffiti on the walls of the inner city. People like to deface things. They like to disrupt things. Some men just want to watch the world burn.
That's right.
So given that fact, computer viruses were not going to go away and were only going to get worse. I just did what I could to be at the forefront of that industry for as long as I could. And it's interesting. I mean, the same kind of like comparison was made, or the same kind of point was made in that Gringo documentary about like McAfee's sort of like own sort of personal paranoia that just like became more and more acute as he got older. But like it's sort of like that same sort of paranoia that's sort of like what got him or like wanting to be prepared for anything. Like that's like when you hear interviews with him or hear him talking, like that's a point that he's constantly driving home, like being prepared for the unexpected or being like ready to keep yourself safe from any kind of threat. This sort of like kind of paranoia that was sort of with him for it seems like most of his life, like sort of one of the things that led him to initially develop the software that would become the McAfee antivirus software.
I mean, that alone is like plenty of life to be talked about.
Yeah, and he was
Jesus
already,
Christ.
it's interesting because I guess I never really put together like the age he was. Like, he was already, I feel like he was already almost 50, like when he developed McAfee. I mean, he was like 40. He was 41, I guess, when he started the company. He was almost 50 by the time he sold it. I guess I didn't realize he was quite so old at that point already, like working in this sort of like this cutting edge technological kind of field. I guess it's.
I mean, he was a boomer.
The penultimate, the ultimate boomer, 1945. Yeah, like the original boomers.
And I remember seeing like the old footage of him when he talks. That underneath his name, they have like John McAfee, security expert, or like security like some kind of like. And I think that just seeing that, he probably saw that title when he's watching himself on TV. Like, I got to be I'm the security guy. So when he goes on there, they know what they want from him. He's on all the morning shows, like, back when he was still, he would put on a suit and tie and then talk about computers and shit. But it seems weird that contrasted what he ended up being.
But even to that point, like that's exactly what you were saying before, Chris, about like how the bravado and like the posturing is the reality. Like the perception is the reality. If he just says like I'm a security expert and I can convince people that I can talk about security, then I'm just the security. I just become the subject matter expert because that's my own brand. Like there's why is Chris Cillizza a fucking, political analyst? Like everybody knows that like he's not analyzing anything, but he just has the brand of being the guy that's the fucking, political analysis.
We all know he's stupid, but like they have to put it on the bottom of the screen that he's smart. And it's like, this is fucking weird. Why are we still doing this? And like computer viruses, from what I remember, y'all can maybe correct me, I'm not sure, but didn't like McAfee and Norton, I don't know if this is true, they would invent viruses so that you'd have to buy their stuff to like, because that makes sense. Because I always thought that like McAfee and Norton and them made viruses so that they could extort you, so that you'd buy their stuff so they would stop it, And I believe
just say that. Let's just say that.
I believe that. Can we just say that?
I believe that.
So all these like computers that were getting wrecked in the early 2000s, that I own like 3 or 4 of them because I was like, either looking at porn or trying to download music. It was probably because of John McAfee, I think. Like I'm kind of mad. That motherfucker owes me money if you think about it, because like his fucking company was probably making computer viruses so to sell me the shit, but I never would buy the shit because that seemed like a scam. So I would just take my fucking chances with the dark web or whatever. Not dark web, regular web. The porn wasn't that weird. It was regular porn. It wasn't dark. But like, because like you try to watch shit and then fucking computer crashes and all that. But I blame him for that personally.
Good. Well,
I blame him for an entire generation of boomers like him who are just terrified of computer viruses for absolutely no reason.
Yes.
Like, I work in customer service for a fucking a cell phone service provider, and man, I get so many boomers who like are calling thinking they have a virus on their iPhone, and they're like talking about McAfee and stuff. They want antivirus software on their on their iPhone.
On their iPhone.
Yeah.
The worst part too is like you're trying to reason with them and explain to them like the thing that you just tried to assert is physically impossible to happen. They're like, is it possible that maybe my Wi-Fi router is stopping, my texts from coming through?
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah. And it's just like, no. And they're like, well, but I've noticed that when I have my Wi-Fi plugged in that I don't get texts or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, you can't, once they get it in their head, like there's no negotiating with them or like explanation. It's like, there's no explanation that's going to like bring them back from the brink of that shit.
I mean, first of all, just to clarify, that can happen. Your Wi-Fi router can stop.
Bad example.
And maybe they're like, I don't know if that's
true, but I believe it now because you said it can't be true.
I spent the last the last Patreon episode with a man speaking in my ear, and if that were to happen to a boomer, it would blow.
You asserted that your computer was picking up a ham radio, okay? Which I also believe can happen.
Well, it's just also crazy because, like, if that were to happen to a boomer, and
they're stealing my identity,
but and even if they like approached their grandchild and was just like, hey, somebody's talking in my ear, and they're like, well, you probably have a YouTube video open. It's like, no, I don't have a YouTube video. Like, can you imagine the fucking who's on first that would come from that? Thank God that I kind of know what's happening, aside from the fact I might be losing my marbles, but who knows what's happening.
I saw something like that happen with a boomer. They walked into the lobby of this building, and their phone was playing Pandora from their pocket, but they didn't know it was still on, and they were like, where's that music coming from in the building? And I was like, there's no music. I think it's coming from you. And they were like, no, it's coming from the speakers. I'm like, I'm pretty sure like it's coming from your pants, dude. It's like this old dude. They don't fucking know, man. They don't.
No, they don't know. No, they don't know. And again, even millennials, I like this turn of phrase, like millennials were the last generation to have an analog childhood. And like, now the Zoomers have like the entirety of their lives is digital. Like, they grew up, they didn't have fucking, forget it. I'm going to go down these steps. You don't want any part of that. Nobody, fucking, we're millennials, our fucking financial crisis, 9/11.
It's true though.
Everybody said it is true, but nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear it. The Zoomers don't take pity on us because they've been in fucking neo-feudalism their entire life is really what it comes down to. Anyway, So I guess let me just briefly go through McAfee Associates, like the actual company. Part of it's kind of boring because really the story is just like, mergers and acquisitions and absorption and spinoffs and, stock options and that sort of thing. I mean, really, it has been like most things. My editorial impression of this is that it's just like a fake company. It doesn't really do anything. Like it's just it is.
He would say that.
He would say that now. Yes.
We'll get to that. But like, so if I understand correctly, he sold his stake. Like he was out of it by 94.
Yeah, early.
Yeah,
exactly. So it was like what? It was like 7 years old or something like that. It for a time, I'm just reading here from a New York Times article from 98. They changed the name of it to Network Associates because I think it was like the middle of the .com boom, and then maybe that sounded a bit more fucking, cachet, whatever it says. Company news: Network Associates agrees to buy a software maker. Network Associates agreed yesterday to acquire Magic Solutions, a privately held software company, for $110 million. I don't even want to like go into the actual mechanics of it because it's not that important. It's totally this happens continuously, like every year because of this shit.
You want to talk about Magic Solutions? You do the whole bag of DMT, like, that'll give you some fucking magical solutions.
Yeah, and even like here, I'm looking at an article then from 2004 from Bloomberg. It said McAfee to acquire Foundstone. Like they went back to the name McAfee. The world's #2 antivirus software maker said yesterday it planned to buy the closely held company Foundstone Incorporated for $86 million in cash to add software that helps customers protect their computer networks. And then, but it goes on to say what they're really doing is purchasing Foundstone's customers. Like, buying their customer list. The purchase of Foundstone will add more than 400 customers, including AT&T and Motorola. So that's what they go for. And at the time too, it was purchased in 2011 by Intel, and Intel purchased it and made it and just turned it into the Intel Security Division. And I want to read from something here quick that talks about it. There was at CES, which is what, Consumer Electronics Consumer Electronics Show in 2014. The CEO of Intel gave like his keynote address or whatever, and he said it says here from a BBC article, one part of his presentation, however, marked the end rather than the start of an era. The decision to rename the firm's security products division. It's ditching the McAfee brand and replacing it with Intel Security. He's screaming in my ear right now. It's the weirdest fucking thing.
Oh, dude. He's back?
It scared the shit out of me. Scared the shit. Shane, it's happening. Don't gaslight me into thinking that there's not a Southern man talking in my ear. That's not Elron, Mexico. It's somebody else. Anyway, fuck. The Patreon listeners will know. I mean, I really fucking lost it there. Anyway, one thing I do want to mention, though, this is a total non sequitur, but do you guys, I don't know if you've seen this before, and I'm going to, Shane, since I don't seem to have much luck playing this on Zoom, I'm going to ask you, perhaps, can you share your screen if I send you a YouTube video to play?
Yeah, okay.
Totally unrelated, but at that same CES show, the CEO of Samsung USA, I think, was out there doing like a keynote address, which was supposed to be with Michael Bay, the director Michael Bay, of Bad Boys fame. And teleprompter.
That was your go-to, Bad Boys, or Michael Bay?
Not Transformers.
What else has he done?
The Transformer movies.
I'm not familiar with that shit.
Oh, come on. Pearl Harbor.
I think he did The Rock.
He
did do The Rock. Yeah. He did do The Rock.
The Rock. Yeah. There you go. Anyway, Bad Boys 2, I guess I could have given that one.
So what happens?
All right. So the teleprompter breaks, and literally we watch him have a panic attack on stage and leave. So I'd love for you to play that if you would.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Ladies and gentlemen, director and producer Michael Bay. Good afternoon, Michael.
How is everyone today? My job as a director is I get to dream for a living.
Michael, you're known for such unbelievable action. What inspires you? How do you come up with these unbelievable ideas?
I create visual worlds that are so beyond everyone's normal life experiences. And Hollywood is a place that creates a viewer escape. And what I try to do is, as a director, I try to...
Tell us what you think.
We'll wing it right now. I try to take people on an emotional ride, and
The Curve. How do you think it's going to impact how viewers experience your movie?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. There
he goes.
Michael Bay, ladies and
Michael
gentlemen.
Bay for joining
That's
us.
all, folks. Again, total non sequitur to John McAfee. Going through this just sparked that. If that's not what a panic attack looks like on stage, I don't know. That's exactly
that's
what it
worth
looks
a Google for the listener. Definitely.
Oh, man.
That's a good.
He couldn't have killed time and thought about a cool story with Bumblebee or some shit, or some kind of fucking thing that fucking happened on the he could. That man made 1 million movies. He got no stories to just kill time. What the fuck?
And the other guy's is very clearly trying to cue him up and be like, "So what do you think about the big curved TV? Yeah. How's that going to look?" All he had to do is be like, "My movies would look great on that. It would be just like being in the movie theater."
The thing I noticed about this is that it's curved, and the curve is different from flat. You should have paid me $75,000 to go up there and say that, but whatever. Damn. Anyway, so going back to McAfee here. So eventually Intel loses its fucking its interest, I guess, and it didn't work out as well. So they spun it off. They spun it off to its own company. Now it's its own publicly traded company. What was interesting, though, is that Intel kept a 49% stake, but this private equity firm, TPG Capital, bought a 51% share of it. And so they've jointly, I think that still exists to this day, although I had to look up TPG Capital, and they were one of the private equity firms that held one of the biggest fucking flaming piles of shit in the 2008 financial crisis. So they made an investment in Washington Mutual. If you'll remember that, WAMU, remember that was like a big like retail bank, but they did a lot of mortgages and shit. They bought that in April 2008. And in September 2008, it was taken over by the government. They lost $1.3 billion on this. And I like it says here, it has been called by some analysts the worst deal in private equity history. I fucking love it, man. And even like I'm looking at like their other holdings. Like they bought part of Neiman Marcus, which is now bankrupt. Harrah's Entertainment, as you know, fucking boned it on that one. Just like a bunch of that shit, which is like really interesting. Like just a litany of bad investments. Anyway, so the last remarkable thing that I should say about McAfee as an organization, aside from that I think it's just scam in my mind. Like I bought a Windows laptop, like a PC last year, and I'm still like, I think it had like a month free of McAfee antivirus software or something like that. And to this day, which is like a year later, I just keep getting pop-ups and like you can't uninstall it. And then it'll like open, like this is just, it's just a scam to me. Like none of this is for anything. Yeah. Like my assumption is that basically if somebody really wants to fuck up my computer, they're going to do it, whether or not I like download some like, you know, key tracker software or some shit like that. One remarkable thing that did happen in the late 1990s with McAfee is they got in a little trouble with the Securities and Exchange Commission. They did some light fraud. Mm-hmm. And when I say light fraud, I mean like a huge amount of fraud. I'm reading from their press release from 2006. It says here, SEC charges McAfee Incorporated with accounting fraud. McAfee agrees to settle and pay $50 million penalty. And basically what they did was they inflated their net revenues by $500 million. Damn.
Mm-hmm. Is that bad?
It's not great. Basically, they said they doubled what they said that they were earning. It says here, the complaint specifically alleges that during the period of 1998 through the year 2000, McAfee inflated its cumulative net revenues by $622 million, and that for 1998 alone, McAfee overstated revenues by $562 million, a misstatement of 131%. So what? So they were making like no, it says it right here, like $190 million. And they said that they earned $562 million. Yeah, that's a big fucking deal, I would say. I'm not a CPA, but to my, layman's eye, that seems like a pretty big fucking bite of fraud.
You can't even explain that. You can't even say somebody hit the wrong button on a calculator or like none of that shit. Yeah, that's just damn.
Which again, it says, who knows if there was fucking, state pensions invested in that or something like that, and people lost their fucking their retirements of it. That's like what you were saying before, Elron, which is like, fucking Bill Gates. He just signs he's not like interpersonally violent, but he like signs a piece of paper and like, an entire Caribbean country doesn't get vaccines or some shit. Yeah. So last thing I do want to mention, again, this kind of goes to like the fraud thing. It's from 2012. It said McAfee antivirus update causes problems for home and enterprise computers. And basically what happened was it says a buggy update released Friday by security vendor McAfee for its consumer and enterprise antivirus products left the computers of its customers unprotected and in some cases unable to access the internet, which they solved by releasing a download. And I'm like,
that's good. That's good. That's good.
Oh, yeah. It says one workaround intended for users who lost internet connectivity on their computers involved uninstalling the product, rebooting the computer, downloading an updated version, and then installing it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
It's kind of the perfect program, though, because your computer can't get a virus if it can't get on the internet. So like, if you just stop the
There you go.
computers,
Problem solved.
Problem solved. Yeah.
See, all you have to do, Elron, is call yourself a security expert, and then you go on fucking MSNBC.
Put me in a
and
suit.
eat that shit
yeah,
up.
put me in a suit. Let me do it.
That's right. All right, let me tell you, all you cooliones out there, how this is going to go down. So that's McAfee. Again, like, even if you like go and actually look up like their mergers and acquisitions, it's just like every year it's something for $50 billion or $50 million, something, some small company. I mean, the generous interpretation of that is to say like they are, hurtling towards oligopoly, and they're gobbling up all of their competitors and shit like that under this name, which I don't even understand. If the guy's a freak, why even like keep his name?
He was mad about that I guess presumably up until the day that he died, because he was mad because he hated the company. He hated the software too. And he poked fun at it a bunch of times, and he was always mad that his name was still attached to this software. Because, like you said, he had gotten out early. And interestingly too, I just thought of it because you had mentioned that horrible deal that happened right before the financial crisis. Apparently McAfee lost most of his money in the financial crisis. He had purportedly, according to the New York Times, he had like a peak of, after he'd like sold his shares and then he had like made his own investments, he had like around $100 million was his like fortune. And then after the financial crisis, it went down to $4 million.
What a peasant.
It's so hard to say for sure though, because he throws out so much bullshit as well. Like,
yes.
Because he did originally say that he lost, like he said that himself, he lost a ton of money. Like, he had like less than 10 million left after the financial crisis. But then he later said like, no, that was a lie. Like, I just said that I didn't have any money because I didn't want them fucking being on my ass.
Right.
So
yeah,
with the timeline there, it's like it was like soon after that, presumably, because then, and this is skipping ahead a little bit, so I'll only lightly touch into it, but it was one of his more recent, in the last few years, kind of tweets in his like weird latter, elder statesman era, I guess, where he's just saying crazy batshit stuff on Twitter. And one of them, he says that he hasn't filed a tax return in 8 years, and I believe he tweeted that out in 2019. So that would put it around 2011, right? So basically around that time, like right after the financial crisis, is he just at least again he claims that he's entirely stopped paying taxes, and part of the major reasoning is because taxation is theft, right?
How'd that work out? So look, that's the boring shit. Let's get into the fucking meat and potatoes here.
It just occurred to me, we should talk about Belize. And Chris, if you watched the documentary, maybe if you can just like quickly like talk about it or something, or we can all jump in, because I don't have a specific thing queued up for
where
it.
To even,
but like,
where to even begin? The whole deal is when did he end up in Belize? It was in the early, was it 2007, 2008? How long was he down there? Anyway, he goes down to Belize in like the the early 2000s, and he's like living in like, and he really, the way I see like this sort of image is he's trying to create for himself is this almost like Hunter Thompson type character, this like very guns and drugs and everything everywhere. So he goes down to Belize, and he's living there for a couple years, and he's like living at first on this like touristy kind of island, and he's he starts like, again, he's got this sort of paranoia. He's paranoid about being like a wealthy American in Belize, and he's so he starts hiring many of them gang members or ex-gang members or criminals of whatever stripe, and some of them ex-cops and all kinds of people from the local area there to act as his armed bodyguards. He's got them around him at all fucking hours of the day. He gets very interested in like starting his own. Again, it's hard to know what is really going on here, or like if he's just crazy, or if he was actually like trying to manufacture drugs or something. But he starts manufacturing or trying to manufacture like his own like new type of antibiotics. So he like moves kind of like into the inland in Belize, and he like builds this compound there, and he hires this like grad student to like attempt to run the lab, and he's trying
It's the Gale guy from Breaking Bad. He hires that guy.
Yeah. And he's down there, and like he's like getting I think more and more paranoid. And he says that somebody one of the things that the documentary focused on, which was I was not actually aware of. I knew that he'd supposedly killed his neighbor down there, but there was another guy. I think his name was David Middleton. I think was the kid's name. Some local kid there in Belize who had like burglarized his house and stolen some shit from him or something. And he sent a couple guys to like kidnap this guy and take him out in the woods and like torture him and like tase him and like cut his face up with a steak knife and all type of stuff and beat the shit out of him. Yeah. And then like allegedly McAfee himself is the one who like they put him in the car with McAfee himself, and then McAfee takes him into town to drop him off and basically be like, this is what happens when you fuck with me. So he drops him back off in town where this guy is taken to the hospital where he then dies several days later. So that's basically one person that he was responsible for, basically putting a hit on down there. His neighbor was the other one. He had this neighbor, what was his name? Something Greg Fowl.
Greg Falls.
Yeah, Gregory Fowl.
Yeah, who lived like 3 doors down from him at like the kind of the resort island part where he had his first house that he built when he moved down there. And I guess they had some sort of dispute over, again, like this guy Greg Fowl, he would like walk down to the, he would walk across the beach to go to this like beach bar or whatever, and he would cut across McAfee's property, like McAfee's part of the beach, and it'd be like dudes with guns and like ferocious dogs like off leashes like barking at him and stuff. And so like they hated each other and they kind of got into it with each other. And supposedly this guy Greg Fowl was talking about like he was going around town saying that he was going to poison McAfee's dogs. And then supposedly McAfee's dogs do get poisoned, and then McAfee himself, which just seems like a bit of an overreaction, I guess, without even having a vet look at them. But he then shoots all the dogs himself. He puts all the dogs down because they've been poisoned.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and then the next day, his neighbor Greg Fowl is murdered, like execution style, in his home. That was when McAfee fled. He fled to he was like got smuggled across the border illegally into Guatemala, and then he was in Guatemala, and then like Vice. Some journalists from Vice like interviewed him in Guatemala, and they posted a picture for the story like on their website or whatever that had like the geotag location or whatever like embedded in the fucking whatever for the picture. So like then they were able to figure out where he was in Guatemala, and so then he got arrested. He got arrested there in Guatemala, and then he supposedly, the way he tells the story is that he knew that I don't know how this is supposed to make sense, but he's saying that he'd been in contact with his lawyer, and his lawyer was filing an appeal to prevent him from being, sent back to Belize to face, criminal investigation for this guy who was murdered. So, but he's saying like his lawyer told him that if he could it would be 3:00 in the afternoon before he could like file this appeal to prevent him from being extradited back to Belize or whatever. And then, so he fakes this. He says he fakes a heart attack, like in front of the cameras. It's all on video.
He pulled a Fred Sanford. Yeah.
Yeah, so he fakes his heart attack, and then they take him to the hospital. But like the whole point is he's saying that if he could just hold out till 3:00, then they won't be able to extradite him back to Belize. He says it'll be another 15 years before they're able to. I don't know how that's supposed to work or whatever, but then the way he tells it is that after that they decided they're not going to hold him anymore, so they deported him back to the United States. Which is what he wanted. The other thing that's featured prominently, which is another one of the stories about McAfee that's featured prominently in that documentary, is the rather harrowing account of the woman who was the person who was working in the lab there for him, who like when she told him that he was leaving, she alleges that he then raped her and like drugged her and raped her and sort of like terrorized her. Basically, she says she went and hid at the lab, and then he shows up at the lab with a gun, and he's like banging on the windows and stuff and acting all crazy, and then she left the next day. So like there's several very, very bad sort of things that happened towards the end of his time down there in Belize before he fled and then was eventually deported back to the United States.
Yeah, I gotta say, if he tries to kind of build up a defense for himself to say like, no, that didn't happen. No, I didn't like, drug and rape somebody. For a guy that says like, I've been living in a dream since 1972 or whatever it is, like, I don't know how much of a leg he has to stand on with that shit. He sounds
well, yeah. I mean, especially
exactly.
considering, again, like this is it's very much similar to Peter Nygard, who we discussed several weeks ago, like down to the shit eating, even, But the other thing is that McAfee the entire time he's down there in Belize, he's sort of preying on local women from impoverished parts of the country. It is an impoverished country, and so he's got this several young women that he calls his girlfriends, who are essentially being exploited, absolutely being exploited by him. So no, it's not too out of character to think that he would outright drug and rape somebody as well.
Yeah, because he's using everybody down there for his own whims.
Sure.
Even the thugs or whatever, the criminals that he's hiring, these people have probably been traumatized living in poverty. Our country does fucked up shit down there, and he goes back there and he can weaponize that trauma and turn them into little automatons to do his bidding.
Sure.
So he's just controlling this entire thing, in a very personal way. So of course, like he'll never see the humanity in someone. So when someone says, I'm leaving here, he's like, you can't do that. So like the rape, like they say, rape's about control. So you could definitely see him doing that. Mm-hmm. You could absolutely see him doing that.
Well, and he also, and this is something like another thing that was brought up in the documentary that is like sort of this idea of like his philanthropic endeavors down there. Like he would give lots and lots of money, but he was mostly giving lots and lots of money to the police.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's not like building a fucking wing of a hospital or like a school or something. He's like giving automatic weapons to the police so that he can exercise his control. He wanted to run the town. He did. He got off on that shit.
Yeah, didn't he like build a jail and every like
he built a police station? Yeah. He built a police station for his armed personal security detail.
Yeah. It shows you where his aims were at,
Yeah.
Right.
And I think I remember reading where he went there to get out of a lawsuit here because he started a flying club and some guy got killed, like flew into a mountain. You heard about this shit? Yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like that, he was wanted for like wrongful death here, and that's kind of what sent him over there. Like he was always getting chased by something else. Like ever since it looks like he got chased out of his own company. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like he got his nephew to like be like the flight instructor. And he got his nephew fucking killed. Which is like the opposite of Uncle Magic. That's like dark Uncle Magic, where you kill your fucking nephew, man. I've been victim of that. We might have all it's what happens when your uncle doesn't really know you, but tries to impose some thing on you, right? And like rich people do this shit all the time. If they got a nephew and he wins like the spelling bee in 7th grade, right? And then he's starting a company and he's like, I need a new jingle or I need a new slogan for my company. Let me hire my nephew who I saw 10 years ago win a spelling bee to do this shit. And the kid don't know that. They just have it in their mind. He probably saw his nephew playing with build like a fold of paper airplane, at like some barbecue a decade before. And he's like, yeah, he's a natural pilot. I'm gonna get him out here to teach everybody to fly. And he drives some other old dude into a mountain. And then he's got to leave and shit. Like it's all been a scam. This whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
Even down there. Cause I think like she was supposed to be working on medicines, that grad student, but he was out there trying to build baths, like some new special bath salt for him, just himself to use.
Yeah, that's what's been alleged. Because he was I guess it would have been a little bit before his neighbor was killed, but his compound was raided and his lab and everything was raided by like the gang enforcement unit or whatever in Belize because they thought he was manufacturing drugs. But like again, back to the what you mentioned about the him and the grad student, this woman who thought that thought that this was work that she believed in, that she was, she was really, wanting to do good things. But McAfee, again, he's just trying to sell, like once he gets this lab set up and everything, he's bringing the media around. They haven't even done anything yet, but he's bringing the media around. He's like hyping this up. He's trying to get, investors like from Silicon Valley or whatever. And he's lying about, the work they've done when they haven't really done anything. She's interviewed in this documentary about, about all that. And like when she's just got started and he's saying that they have like a topical spray on antibiotic developed, which is complete bullshit.
That sounds like impossible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? That's Theranos type of shit. Like,
exactly.
That's like Elizabeth Holmes.
Right.
He was just using everybody. Even like those every like in the documentary, every young girl or whatever they talked to came from like a fucked up situation.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my stepdad used to molest me or something like that. So he was just like preying on these people,
Yeah.
And just making them like the hammock thing is weird, man. That's fucking like he made his own shit hammocks. Like he cut a fucking thing out of it. I don't even know how like the physicalness of it works. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, because like I lay in a hammock in my backyard to read, and I was like reading that, and I was like, I don't even think in this position I could shit. I don't know how they're fucking doing that, but it's like
not getting out of this.
Like
one,
it's just weird. I don't know how it goes. I don't know if that's just probably true because he's the opposite of all the other billionaires, right? Because they all have like Peter Thiel got a blood boy, right? It makes sense that McAfee would have like a shit girl, like they're taking the other stuff. You know what I mean? Like the respected billionaires are taking the blood from people. It seems like he's on the flip side of them, just ingesting shit. Like that makes sense in a way, I guess. I don't know.
What are we doing?
I can't wrap my head around it. I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
Supposedly he also like there's some pictures of him you can see from like when he dyed his hair, and he looks awful. Like when he first fled Belize to Guatemala, and he dyed his hair and his goatee like jet black, like to try to disguise himself. And when he's like looking at this picture of him right now from when he first showed up in Guatemala, and he looks awful. He's looking like shit. So sure, yeah, I'm sure he was fucking doing bath salts and shit down there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he all the way up through at least 2012 when I saw this interview, he claims to have been sober. I don't think that was necessarily true for very long. I mean, he was certainly fucking involved in some fucking methamphetamine or some kind of shit down there.
Yeah. I mean, this will come up a little bit later, but later on, I think in 2014 or 2015, when he was back like stateside, he was arrested for a DUI under the influence of Xanax, I believe.
Well, there you go.
So, I mean, that alone shows.
Was that the one in Tennessee?
It may have been.
He was like, I didn't know you couldn't drive on Xanax. I'm sorry. That's what he literally used.
Is it a crime?
Is it a crime? I didn't know that. They didn't tell me I couldn't drive on this.
Well, there's this video of him, like I think that documentary opens up with him of him getting arrested, and he's like fucking. He again just shameless self promoter, can't help himself, and he's like as the cops like putting him in cuffs, he's like, yeah, you probably heard of me and seen my videos on YouTube. Hey, you might want to call the FBI. They're probably looking for me. And the cop's like, I don't know who you are, sir.
I mean, this leads directly, in terms of like self-promotion, right? Like this leads like, when he does come to the United States, in like 2012, 2013 or whatever, after this whole, event takes place, he gets married again, but then, it's like there's all the media attention on him about this, like, again, this sort of like scandalous, outrageous story or whatever, and his response to it is to make the how to uninstall McAfee antivirus video, which then goes viral on YouTube, which is really like funny and weird, and I was considering like playing it. I will just very quickly share with you guys a screenshot, just for 1 second. And in the video, the whole idea is that he sort of, and the way that he described the video afterward is that he just played up the image that the media was building about him, right? He was like, again, the way he put it is sort of like, I'm owning all of the ridiculous absurdity things that they're saying about me. And so in the video, it's like, he's got like all these guns around. He's got like big things that say bath salts on it.
His tattoos, by the way, awful. His tribal tattoos, awful. just ridiculous.
And then he's got, all these like, young women around him in scantily clad dress, and they're like, touching him, and they're going like, "Oh, John," and stuff. And he's also, at the end of the video, he's like, this is like the way to uninstall the McAfee antivirus. This is like the only way to do it. And he takes a gun and he just like shoots his laptop. And so it's like, it's this attempt to kind of own this shamelessness, right? And to put it out there and be like, yeah, I do this shit. Like, what are you going to say about it now, right? And I guess, with that in mind, that leads him to the conclusion of like, why not run for office?
Yeah.
Like at this point.
I mean, that calculation is not like any less sound than any other reason of any of these fucking weirdos that would run for office.
Yeah, and he got like second place in the Libertarian.
He came second
thing.
to Gary Johnson.
Yeah, second.
Jesus Christ.
If the girls he was dating were just a little bit younger, I think he could have.
Yeah.
Got the nomination.
He would have been a shoe-in.
Yeah, 16 was a little too old for them. So.
Yeah, should I get into the campaign stuff?
Oh, please, by all means.
Hit it.
Okay, so
Let's get
so
into the shit.
in 2015, he decides he's going to run for president, and he's going to do so, would you believe it or not, as a libertarian, and within the Libertarian Party. And
I believe it.
I watched a bunch of his campaign material. To be honest, like a lot of it is like pretty boring. It's the same shtick you hear from like all libertarians, right? It's like, a heavy focus on all the social stuff, like, we should end the drug war, we should legalize prostitution, legalize drugs, legalize gambling, whatever. And then, and at the same time, like get rid of the taxes, taxation is theft, all that kind of thing. One funny thing he mentioned in one of the debates he had with Johnson and this other weird freak was like, he was like, we should abolish the FDA.
He's just he couldn't get his bath salts on the market,
Right.
I guess.
Right.
Topical antibiotics or whatever.
But it seems whether or not, again, and it's so hard to parse some of this because I think as we've demonstrated a couple of times, right, like his main skill, if he ever had one, was sort of like promoting himself and putting himself out there, as we said, as like a cyber security expert. And so that seems to be at least the impetus of like at the beginning of his campaign of how he's putting himself forward. And he says like, I should be president because like I understand cybersecurity. And it starts with this, and I want to share this clip here. So let me get this queued up.
He really did sort of like miraculously reinvent himself when he came back from Belize, like literally wanted for questioning for murder, and then to reassert himself as this like sort of cybersecurity expert. And he was being like interviewed on cable news and stuff, and it'd be like John McAfee, cybersecurity expert and stuff. Like he fell right back into playing that role.
Yeah, and so this is an interview with Larry King that he did in 2015 right around when he had started the campaign, and the context for this is what's at the topic of discussion, and this is again this sort of like media stunt thing that he did this is around the time that the San Bernardino shooting had happened, and the FBI had gotten the phone from the San Bernardino shooter.
Right.
And there was this whole like long protracted public debate of like the FBI wanted Apple to create like a back door into iPhones so that the FBI could use. And so McAfee like basically retorted like that's, a stupid idea, but then he was like I'll hack into the phone. If you give me the phone, I'll hack into it. And so that's that's the setup of this this little bit of the interview.
You said that you could unlock the San Bernardino terrorist phones for the FBI without upsetting the rest of it. How would you do that?
Well, there are certain people in the world, Larry, and I'm not saying that I'm among them, but I certainly know many who have very unique talents. There are mathematicians who can multiply two 100-digit numbers in their heads and instantly give you the answer.
Damn,
we have
dude.
Bach and Mozart who cannot be trained. These are people with innate superhuman talents. Hackers also have these talents. I know many of them. I promise you that, in fact, I've said if we can't do it within 3 weeks, I will eat my shoe on the Neil Cavuto show.
Okay. So that's that. And then the interview goes on. They talk about some other stuff. And then Larry King kind of circles back around to some of the things he said there. And I think again, what's funny about this now too, with all the context of like his early life, if you put that in conjunction and thinking about him being kind of like a fraudulent guy, this is really, I think, revealing.
You mentioned smart people. There are smart people everywhere, and there are the Mozarts in the box. Aren't there also smart people on our side that can stop this?
Right, but they're not within the government, Larry. Because these smart people, the truly talented hackers, the truly talented cybersecurity specialists, they have 14-inch purple mohawks and pierced ears and tattooed faces, and they demand to smoke weed while they're working. Well, who's going to hire them in the government? Yes, we have them, and fortunately they are on our side. We are not utilizing them, and we have to if we are to survive as a nation. This is an absolute necessity.
So the idea that it's like, again, this sort of almost cartoonish image of like a hacker from the 1980s or whatever. Yeah. But also then the insistence you have to do drugs on the job, and that's what makes you a real genius, and that's clearly like just how he views himself, right? Like I was high all the time, and that's why like no company could hold me, and that's what also was the source of all my great genius. I coupled in this, and I won't show the clip just because it's like it's faster to just say it, and it's a little bit boring. But speaking to as well the paranoia, the whole idea of him putting himself forward as a cybersecurity expert, is he regularly would say like China and Russia are 20 years ahead of us when it comes to cybersecurity, and like at any moment China could like take down the United States electrical grid forever, and it's just that it's that same kind of like EMP right-wing fantasy, like China or North Korea is going to blow up an EMP and take down the grid, and then everybody's going to be like foraging for silver and like murdering each other in the streets or whatever. It's that same weird paranoid delusion. But here's another one. This is from one of the debates where he had, again, it was Gary Johnson and I forget this other weird, sick libertarian freak. It's mostly pretty boring. This was a Fox News debate they did. But here's what I thought was an interesting clip that, again, sort of shares his version of the story of like what happened in Belize and how he's being like targeted and persecuted or whatever.
Mr. McAfee, when I
have a hard time picking and choosing.
I did have to pick and choose. When I Googled you, you sound a little flaky. You went to Belize. Police there accused you of unlicensed drug manufacturing. You were a person of interest in the murder of a neighbor. You left Belize, went to Guatemala, which deported you to America. You're still technically a fugitive, though they don't seem that interested in grabbing you.
People like it.
And Gary Johnson gives him a little kiss on the cheek.
Here in America,
what the
you
fuck?
were arrested for driving under the influence of Xanax. Why should people trust you?
Well, I mean, let's look at the absolute facts. What are the chances of my survival if I were actually manufacturing illegal drugs in Central America? Please. All right, if I were really doing that, I would be second half-life. So that's issue one. And number two, I was never charged with murder, and certainly not a fugitive from justice. That's an absolutely incorrect statement. You can all that web. So that's utterly false. I did indeed escape into Guatemala. Why did I have problems? I was asked for a $2 million donation to the ruling government. I said no. Exactly 1 week later, my property was raided by 42 armed soldiers who shot my dog in front of my eyes, tortured me, and destroyed $500,000 worth of my property. That was a problem I had with police.
And DUI in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, the DUI. That was the most foolish and stupid thing I've ever done. I own up to it. All right.
So, again, what's interesting there is the version he tells, especially in conjunction of what you were talking about, Chris, is like he basically just inverts the story. He's like, the police killed my dogs, and they tortured me, when in fact, he almost certainly tortured this poor young man. And it's a complete... And then he turns the DUI thing into a joke, right? Like, haha, okay, yeah, I did that. Whoopsie.
And that doesn't work without stereotypes, because he's counting on Americans to view as like this is some third world banana republic where everybody's corrupt and they're going for him. And like if you make a little bit of weed, the cartels will come and kill you. So of course I wasn't doing that. He's using that paranoia about brown people and in Central America. He's weaponizing that and then making himself the innocent victim. It's fucking sick compared to the the stuff he's doing down there. Like, he's murdering people down there. And then, like, oh, yeah, fuck. It's just fucked up, man. That's just racism. Like, a lot of that. He's just using racism.
Yes.
And also pandering then to the libertarian crowd with the idea of, like, the government asked me for money. Yeah. And we all know how evil and corrupt the governments are, right? And they want to take my money. And then speaking more to the paranoia, this is from like a little, like a more of like an ad spot thing they did about his campaign. And it's long, it's kind of interesting, it's worth watching the whole thing. But I wanted to just share this one clip where he talks about, he sort of sets it up and he's like, the reason why I want to become president is because like cybersecurity is like a real threat. And then text comes on screen. It says, now the computer security entrepreneur is worried about his own security. And this is his description of, his life now.
I carry armament because I believe in my heart, and so does my wife, and so does my security man, that this Sinaloa cartel is trying to kill me. The largest cartel in the world, the most powerful and richest organization on the planet.
I'm always armed when we bring the dogs out. Tequila.
I outed the corruption within the government of Belize. Therefore, their tourism dropped and their economy sank, and I continue to trash Belize, and they simply wanted to stop.
John?
Yeah.
We've had a visitor.
He's standing right here. You can see where the leaves are totally gone.
A wheel turned right here into the mud.
We need to get some fucking traps up here. Do you think Jimmy could get us some firecrackers we could remotely detonate?
Yeah.
John Poole, my bodyguard. Probably the scariest motherfucker I know. I think the fundamental difference between myself and every other contender in every party is that I have no shame.
Remote detonation. I love that.
Yeah. And he's got this like old guy who's like a cool operator, like with a Glock, who's like, look, there's leaves on the ground. John, there's leaves. The leaves are missing. We gotta set up fucking bear traps.
He claimed, even I remember, even once he was back in the United States, I think it was 2019. He claimed that he'd been poisoned here. Remember, there was like picture. He posted all these pictures on Twitter of like him in a hospital, like saying he was on life support or something, like saying someone had tried to assassinate him. And I think that was right before actually he like took off on him and his wife took off on the boat. To go sail around international waters,
Yeah, so that was that's the gist of his campaign, and then the actual issue stuff, it's all the boilerplate libertarian shit, right? Like abolish taxes and all that. And the horrible FDA, And so yeah, he was the runner up in the thing. I think he only got like 14% of the vote in the convention hall or something. Just within the Libertarian Party. So he was sort of like, part of his argument too is like Gary Johnson only gets like 1% of the vote. We need somebody who can like really pull in like a much higher numbers, and then he can't even do that within the Libertarian Party. So he at the convention, I believe he said like, I'm not going to run again. I'm, instead I'm going to focus on this like grassroots stuff. He founded something. It was called like, it's like it's not rock the vote. It was like change the vote or some stupid
snort the vote
initiative. Yeah, some idiotic initiative to, that was called like, common sense voting, libertarian gobbledygook, whatever. And then, it seems like after then, his main focus started to go into like both being much more visible online and sort of parlaying, that like little media experience and that notoriety into like, kind of doing all this like stunty stuff. And then he got really into cryptocurrency. And I'm just going to kind of just paint that with a broad brush because I don't really understand a lot of it and I don't care. But it seems like he just got invested in a bunch of like various Bitcoin-esque scams and tried to use, again, parlay his like fame or whatever into being like, hey, you could trust me. And then as well, he eventually did. Then in 2018 he said, I am actually going to run for president again. And it seemed like the main goal at that time for him to run for president again was to promote all of his various cryptocurrency kind of scams and say like, the United States government should switch from the dollar to Bitcoin or whatever the fuck. Now in terms of his second run then in 2020, in the interim period, like I mentioned, there was a couple of weird tweets that he started to do, and this is also like in between a lot of this. This is like when I first kind of became aware of him in like the last couple of years, because he would tweet, again, some stuff that sounded sort of just like libertarian-y nonsense, but then other weird like shameless stuff. He would do a lot of like video posts where he'd just talk about gross sex shit. And it was always kind of like creepy and kind of funny and sort of weird. Like, why is this old man doing this kind of shameless thing? In 2019, he had that tweet that I mentioned before, and I'll just read it here, where he just said, I have not filed a tax return for 8 years. Why? 1, taxation is illegal. 2, I paid tens of millions already and received jack shit in services. 3, I'm done making money. I live off cash from McAfee Inc. My net income is negative, but I am a prime target for the IRS. Here I am. Here's here's another weird one from 2018, and it includes a picture, and it says, Happy birthday to my son, and the Mrs. McAfee's, Elijah. Turned 14 today and is already well over 6 feet tall. Elijah is not one of my 47 children who carry my genes, but my love for him is no less. Study hard and stay away from girls for as long as possible, son. And then there's a reply here that says, you literally have 47 children, or is there an inside joke / sarcasm I'm not getting? And he responded, I have 47 genetic children. And so that's, again, this is one of those things where it's unclear if he is just kind of making shit up, but it seems also likely, given what his activities were in Belize, that he may have just sired a bunch of kind of like bastard genetic children that then, ended up sort of quasi-orphaned or whatever in Belize.
Jesus.
So then around this time is also when he starts having these like weird meltdowns on Twitter, and he gets into some legal troubles again, and I think, Elron, you'll get into the details of some of that maybe, but this is like when he sort of takes to the sea, like a la Arrested Development, the maritime law can't catch you or whatever, and so he starts going around with like his wife and some other hangers-on and like business people on his like yacht or whatever. He starts sailing around again in the like Caribbean, and it's unclear, like, is he still running? What's his goal? And in January 2019, he releases this video on Twitter, which I want to share with you guys. And this is how he outlines his plan for like how he's going to run his campaign in exile.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're probably wondering how I'm going to manage my presidential campaign from a boat. I have with me on this little speaker my campaign manager, Rob Logia, in New York. We're going to explain it. First of all, we have thousands of volunteers. Rob and one of our other volunteers are creating masks of my face, which are going to be given to thousands of people in 2 different groups. First are road warriors, who once a month are going to appear in parks, street corners, restaurants, all around America, while I speak through loudspeakers through them. After I've spoken for 15 minutes, I will connect up with someone in LA, answer a question, then someone in New York, and so on. That's group 1. Group 2 are the people who will be going to conferences, doing keynotes and debates. Now, Rob, this is your idea. Where did you get this idea?
Well, I wish I could claim credit for this idea, but as you know, John, the Asians are ahead of us in most things, and this is no exception. Right now, this is a service that's available in Asian countries. You can have Beam Buddha, where you send a representative to a conference or a meeting or even a party, and they go as you. They've got a mask or an iPad strapped to their head, depending on how sophisticated the service you buy, and you can interact via a Skype link with the people that are there. And, in our brave new world, it might as well be as if you're there. So that's how we're going to bring your presence out into the world, regardless of where you are to be.
I will be going to conferences as a surrogate. I will be looking at people through a camera, answering questions, shaking hands as I tell my surrogate to shake hands, and speaking. This is how we're going to do it. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Good night.
So, again, to clarify, his idea was we're going to make thousands of masks of my face, and then I'll be able to speak through just random people on the street and just like soapbox wherever. A pretty bizarre idea. And again, the almost like weird, again, that sort of quasi-Orientalist idea of like, the Asians or the Chinese are 20 years ahead of us in this way. A totally bizarre kind of petering out. And you can see in this video too, and he got very defensive about it because a lot of people mention like his whole affect in this video very clearly seems either someone who's on the brink of mental collapse or like in heavy drug use, probably a combination of the two. And he got very insistent that he was not on drugs, but he's twitching. He looks like obviously this is an idea that does seem to be spurned at least in part by a certain kind of speedy, like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Everybody, thousands of people wear my mask, and just fan out into the city. And we'll call them the Road Warriors, and maybe we could even strap them to war rigs, and they could just crash into the gas town and start blowing up cities in my name.
I have like seeing that as well. Like obviously there was some element of let's just say pharmaceutical enhancement there, but like nobody likes to gas each other up like rich white dudes like that. You know what I'm saying? We're like, well, here's this revolutionary idea, and then they start getting excited. And once that little kernel of a seed is planted, then they start like making them like feeding off of each other and getting themselves excited on this like cockamamie idea. And I'm like convinced that like many venture capital ventures, when they say like, oh, this is gonna fail, or most venture capital things fail, but the ones that take off really take off. That's just them being like, oh well, hey, you gotta hear my buddy. He's got a pen that can actually tell you your blood type. And they're like, no shit.
Right.
That could be. Oh, there's a market for that. Everyone would love to know their blood type with a pen. And then and of course it's like a fucking fraud. And I mean, where did this go? Where's the Joker? But it's fucking McAfee's face everywhere.
And he won the presidency in 2020, and he is now your president. I'm sure there's at least somebody out there who has a bumper sticker that says John McAfee is my president.
There's a market for those bumper stickers. Next round of merch we'll do that.
That's basically it. I mean, the rest of the story then is just the kind of like the sad and equally bizarre decline in his legal troubles. Elron, if you want to talk about some of that, how all of this sort of finally caught up to him on the high seas.
Yeah, a lot of it. Well, see, he had to get out of here because he got sued by that guy he killed in Belize, not David Middleton, the other one. He was an American. He owned like a sports bar in Orlando, so it's hard to feel sorry for the guy too much. But it's like, so he's like, that guy comes from here, and that guy comes from, he's like a U.S. citizen, so they sued him. And he won like a wrongful death suit against McAfee for like $25 million. So he didn't want to pay that. He didn't want to pay the guy that his nephew crashed into the cliff. And so like and he's being sued by a lot of other people. And now because of taxes, he's in trouble here because he hasn't paid his taxes, and also money laundering. So he's been doing all this crypto shit he's been doing. He's using it a way to like hide money and do crimes here. So then the United States, they want him for this shit. So he starts sailing around on his boat. He ends up getting apprehended in Spain. It's really weird though, because when you think about it, like this dude could murder and rape in like Belize. You can do anything to those people. But if you take a little money from the U.S. government, that's his ass. Like that's what, because like he used the other countries as like Westworld. Like when you're rich, the rest of the world is Westworld. You just can't commit the crimes inside the real country, which they think is America. I guess to a degree, whatever. If you're rich, you can't fuck nobody over in America, because the Orlando guy got, they got lawyers. Like the rich guy he killed, they got lawyers. But like the people that he raped and abused down there, they can't, like Belize doesn't even have a crime lab to test the fingernail they found on the dead body, And like that says a lot, because like Belize has been like already looted. Like we already took the good shit from there, and now the only thing they have left down there is like people. So like when these expats go down there, it's not just for like a cheap standard of living and the natural beauty. It's just all these people now that like are going to be beholden to you because you have all this money. So it's like that's the last resource they got left to exploit. And they go down there, and even the fight they got in, that's such like a libertarian fight of two guys fighting about access to the beach and who gets to own it, and he's mad at his dogs. That's like, it's like, but like that's that's the extreme fight, because when that property dispute happens here, your neighbor just spears you like Rand Paul and you break a couple ribs, but you live to tell about it and the guy gets in trouble. When you have like a property dispute among libertarians in that environment, it can go all the way. Like it's just different rules once you cross that border. But the ramifications... That did just quickly remind me, sorry to interrupt, but just quickly, one of the clips I didn't end up playing just because it was too long, but in the 2016 Libertarian primary, he did a speech, maybe at the convention, and he's like, this is the real talk. And one of the things he says is like, look, we'd all love to just sit around the dinner table and debate the NAP all day, but we got to get to real business. When he said that, it's pretty good. I'm sorry, please continue. Yeah, that's all. It's all fucked up. You know, like the border exists not to keep us safe, but it exists as a way to, you know, like, because the money can travel freely, and rich people, as you can see, he can sneak to Guatemala and back to the U.S. McAfee uses the borders to escape the fucked up shit he's done, rather than
clearly. Yeah,
it doesn't keep it. The border doesn't benefit us. It benefits McAfee because he can take money. The money can cross the border without no problems. There's no border guards for money. You know, it just goes. You know, and so he ends up in like getting arrested in Spain. Now, Spain don't know in October of 2020. Spain don't really know what to do with him at first, because they want to make sure he's not a political prisoner or like an ideological prisoner. So then Spain kind of looks at the case and said, no, you're actually wanted for some legit stuff. So that's when they decide to extradite him to the United States. And he knows if that happens, like I said, you can kill people in Belize. You can do that kind of shit, but you can't steal from Uncle Sam. He knows he's probably going to spend the rest of his life in jail. And he knows that because, like, if he was like a regular billionaire or millionaire and he was still in polite society, there's no way he goes to jail for that, you know, because they all know how to do it legally, you know, or do it under the radar. But because of who he is, he knows he can't get away with that. You know, like I said, he's got shit girls instead of blood boys. So when you got shit girls, you could pay real crimes for that kind of stuff. So he decides, I don't know, two things could have happened, right? So he realizes the gig is up, and if he kills himself, he goes out as a meme. He goes out like within the spectacle that he's created, because now he lives in capitalism now is more of a spectacle than it was back in the day, and he has evolved with that the whole time. So he knows if he kills himself, it'll look like the government killed him. It'll be some nice little tying a bow up in his life, and that kind of ends it. Or maybe the same guy who killed like Epstein and Biden's dog comes for him. You know what I mean? like maybe the hitman did kill him. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he took his own life, because he was a liar. He was a showman. It seemed like the way he would go out, and he did say stuff like, I have a dead man switch that that all my documents will get released, and that never came out. And I seen some.
What happened?
Yeah, you know what I heard? I heard somebody making apologies for that, saying, well, it was actually his all McAfee's documents was actually in that condo in Florida that collapsed. And the government did that.
Oh my god! I haven't seen that.
Yeah, people have been saying that. Like, he said I have 30 terabytes of data on everybody, and this is my address, and it was like a fake post or something.
Well, he also like he built up. I mean, especially after Epstein, like it was, you know, he said several times, if anything ever happens to me, if they say I killed myself, I didn't, I was murdered. Like I mean, I think that he kind of, like you were saying, he knew the jig was up. He knew he was fucking as old as he was. He's probably going to spend the rest of his life in an American prison. And being the showman that he is, I think he probably considered that the best option for him. But speaking of Epstein, I did want to mention one thing that was there's been some speculation. Like right after the summer when Epstein got arrested, there was this YouTube channel called Rusty Shackelford that was like posting drone videos of like Epstein's island and stuff. And there's a lot of speculation at the time that was McAfee, because he was he was fucking talking about it all the time, and he was in the Caribbean, on his fucking yacht, nothing but time on his hands, and probably a drone. I don't know, I never really believed in that, because again, I think he's such a fucking shameless self-promoter that if he'd done it, he would have just fucking said it was him. You know, he wouldn't have posted it anonymously. But one other thing too I wanted to mention here is there's another because he had some some interesting fucking posts on Twitter the last couple years. But there was one I looked up that I remember. He was in Lithuania and he like posted a picture. It says "You're sorry for the silence. At the Mrs. McAfee and I are now in Eastern Europe at an ultra secure facility." And he like posts a picture of it, and it's just like a desk and a file cabinet, but like in a room, but like blanketing the walls in the room are like those fucking like those silver blankets, like the fucking like emergency blankets. You know what I'm saying? He's like built like a Faraday cage in like a hotel room or something, like hanging, essentially just like plastering the wall with foil, right? And like this is like his ultra secure facility.
Very cool and normal. That's a fine thing to do if you're feeling a little insecure and you need a little comfort.
This is Dwight. This is you've reached your solution. This is how you're going to get away from the CB radio guy. Yeah.
I could be rid of this man that's talking to me in my ear.
Yeah.
Oh man, he had a tweet a while back about like fucking whales and being in some special club.
Yes,
like
did.
that was fucking gross, man. He was so weird.
Another thing too that he picked up in the last year or so is he did a lot of posts about like sort of like coronavirus skepticism stuff and being masks don't save you and it's all overblown, it's all a lie by the government, that kind of stuff.
Another thing that interests me about him, he got toward the end, he was named CEO of some tech company. You remember that? And like the tech stock, it jumped by like 100 million or something like that when he was named CEO. They just put him as it kind of like, when I was thinking about it. So in 1994, companies sort of had to make sense. Like capitalism was still sort of providing, it was still sort of legit. So he got pushed out of his own company because he was too fucking weird. Like he was like selling coke to people and he was weird. So like the shareholder, he was doing sex games in the office and it was like really creepy, weird stuff. The fucking the investors bought his shares out, forced him out of his own company. Because his company had to really run sort of like a business at that point. But now, like, everything is a scam and everything's so fake. He lost a job. Now they take him and they put him as CEO, and just that act, like, made the money, made the stock evaluations go up. And it's like, it shows like how different of a time it is. Like, this guy was fired for being crazy 30 years ago, and now you put him in the main job because he's crazy now. Right. It's like it shows how far capitalism has how it's just devolved into it's just a scam at this point.
Total scam.
With his weird. I want to find the name of that. I didn't write it down. I just wrote that he was named CEO in stock jump, but it was weird. It was like I think it was like a Bitcoin company or something.
Right. Yeah. That sounds.
And that as we're thinking about like kind of putting this together and just trying to fucking learn some sort of lesson out of this. Like if we're not going to get anything out of this, can we at least learn something from this? I don't know what it is, but like Elron, I think you're totally right that like a guy like this shouldn't exist. Like a guy like this, like it's a very American thing for this totally fucking bizarre personality. Let me say this: strong main character energy. Like, he thinks he's the main character of his own story, and he is completely unrepentant from, hasn't wavered from that idea. And again, I can't stop thinking about what you said, Chris, of him saying like, I believe that DMT trip, like this might just still be a trip,
right?
And I'm just asleep, and if I come to, I'm gonna come back, and I'm back in fucking Tennessee or wherever that was. Like strong main character energy, and just he took that inertia when he went to Belize. And Elron, I really like the way that you said it. And I think he did play that role as like neo-conquistador there, where it's like, everybody else here has no justification to be here more than I do. Because I chose to be here.
And I'm helping everybody. By involving them in my life. Like, they're better off for having known me. Now they have my kids. That's great for them.
Again, big neo-conquistador energy there.
Yeah, that was like, as like, all the people around him, as he got older and more like insatiable and deranged, like all this depravity, like it just became a bottomless pit, and everybody else around him got sucked into it because they needed him for money. Like
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just fucked up, man.
It is fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, his wife is still on the. I mean, at least publicly, and I just from a surface reading of it, it seems like she genuinely believes that he didn't kill himself, and she's like has the whatever she tweets out stuff like justice for John McAfee and. We need to investigate this. We need to get to the bottom of this, right? It's like, that's like going to be like, that's her like public life now for the foreseeable future, right? It's like all wrapped up in this like, this like just deranged like lunatic, just kind of spiraling down until, he basically trapped himself into a corner and was like, well, what do I do now?
The most epic internet thing he could think of, and that's kill himself. And then fucking... You know what he kind of reminds me of? It's like, so Alex Jones at heart is a fucking coward. He's a wuss. You know what I mean? Like, he's all internet stuff. But, like, I think if Alex Jones had a little bit more, wasn't such a wuss, he would be McAfee. Because, like, Alex Jones pretends to live that life, but it's all just internet. It's all just weirder.
Right.
And McAfee can do it on the internet, but McAfee does the crazy, weird shit in real life, I think. He reminds me, like, of Alex Jones. They're, like, kind of like cousins or something. Spirit cousins or some shit.
I was also thinking in terms of, like, the weird self-promotion and like, especially, like, the relationship to internet culture and trying to, be, like, meme and stuff. Sort of reminded me of, like, Elon Musk, but, like, sort of similar to what you were saying, like, where Elon Musk also is kind of, like, cowardly and just sort of, like, not really gonna do anything crazy. He's just gonna be like, ooh, epic dog meme, or, like, here I am, like, smoking a blunt. Isn't this edgy? Meanwhile, like, John McAfee is, like, fucking doing, like, speedballs in his ass or whatever, and, like, recording videos about how, like, the entire U.S. grid is gonna be taken down immediately, and that's why he's sailing to the Bermuda Triangle to finally investigate what's really going on. It's like I mean, and again, he's such a colorful character that, I think it is important as we brought up a number of times, like, he really did ruin so many people's lives in a very direct way. So, it's always something that you have to take a grain of salt with. But it is so bizarre, and even to the point too of his own self promotion. He used to, and I would see him post about this too, like, very proudly, that, like, there have been many talks over the last couple of years of, like, people making a movie, like a Hollywood film out of his life, and like Johnny Depp maybe will play him, or at one point, like, Seth Rogen or Michael Keaton were, like, attached to the project, and he would, like, proudly, like, show this, like, my life is adventurous. It is worthy of a funny story. I'm just like Hunter S. Thompson,
Life like a movie. Damn.
I added him. There was one time I was sharing this, I think, the other day with you guys, but there was like when Epstein fucking first got arrested, and, like, there were was in, like, a bunch of Epstein related, like, group DMs, and, like, I, like, replied to John McAfee. I was like, John, follow me back so I can add you to my Epstein DM, and he was like, okay, and he followed me back, and then I added him, and we added him, and we were like, John, welcome, and he just, like, never posted anything ever in there ever again. The hell dude said that he was in a group DM, like, they added McAfee to a DM several years back, and then he, like, sent a picture of his arm and, like, tried to say it was his dick, like, in the fucking group chat or something.
What the fuck?
Yeah. No.
Man, we need to log off.
Oh, shit.
This is too much, man.
Oh, man.
Christ. God help us.
I'm glad he's dead.
He also, again, I just remembered too, another one of the things, like when he had said, if I can't, like, hack into the thing, if I can't hack into the phone, I'll, like, eat my own shoe on TV. He said something similar where he was like, I think it was like with Bitcoin. He was like, the price of Bitcoin will be like $500,000 by XY date, and if it isn't, and it was something weird and extreme. It was, what was it? It was really gross. It was like a weird sex thing, but
I don't see how it could be grosser than what he's already done. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he said if it doesn't, if he posted in 2017 that the price of Bitcoin would jump to $500,000 within 3 years, adding, if not, I will eat my own dick on national television.
What the fuck?
And then in 2019, he said it's going to be $1 million. And then like later, he was like, "Oh yeah, I was just saying that so like more people would buy Bitcoin."
Again, like cousins to Elon Musk shit, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it's weird because like the same guys who look at Elon Musk, they say like he's gonna save us. He'll take us all to the moon. And he's gonna fucking stop climate change. And they look at John McAfee and they're like, yeah, he could probably crack the San Bernardino shooters' phone. Like people just believe this shit.
Right.
They just fucking he's on
security expert. Yeah. It says
security.
It, right
it says it. Yeah. It's under his name.
If Elon Musk is like Iron Man, John McAfee is like the Hulk. You know.
Yes,
that one was for you, Dwight.
I know of the Hulk.
Yeah,
he's a learned scientist, as I understand.
Yeah. What color is the character?
Blue. It's got to be green, right?
It's green. It is green. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Elron, I want to say that it was a pleasure, but I feel like I got dragged through the dirt.
Yeah, I hear you. This is
fuck me.
I had a good time, but yeah, I feel like I'm gonna need a shower. I need a shower.
When I knew we were gonna do this episode, I was like, I know we have to do this. Like I know, like it feels like we had to like fulfill some sort of duty. Mm-hmm. It was just like I know that we have to do this and get through this.
Yeah. Because when they die,
it was harder than I thought.
You got to do it. Because like when you guys did Rumsfeld after he died, like I was listening to that, like I was mowing the grass, like super aggressive. I was just like running over piles.
That's right.
It's like so bad.
It's so bad, man. It's so bad.
Yeah, I mean, he is, and the thing is too, the McAfee I feel like has sort of like even gotten the pass just because of his weird, like sort of quirky behavior, especially online and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, this is a real bad guy. Yeah,
he's a real sicko.
Yeah,
R.I.P. Or not. Piss. No, he would like that. Fuck. You don't want it. Yeah, you can't even tell him the rest in your bit. Yeah, you can't even. He would. No, I hope his coffin's clean as hell. I hope there's no shit around that motherfucker, man. He doesn't deserve it. Damn, weird motherfucker.
Elron, typically this is where we would kind of, ask our guests to tell us what we got going on. But I believe you're a committed poster and thinker.
Yeah, I work at a water plant and I post on the internet while I'm there. So that's. I'd like to plug tap water. Tap water. Brought to you by a bunch of dudes and ladies. And really hardworking people who are doing their best to pass all the government regulations and even exceed them. I don't know.
I love it, man. Yeah. We're a big fan of municipalized water systems here.
Yes. I'm in the right place.
Yeah, you know it. Yeah. Yes. For anybody that's not familiar, please follow Elron Mexico on Twitter. Brother, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank y'all for having me. I love doing this. It's good to see all of y'all. It makes my night.
Yeah, man.
Likewise.
Cool.
All right. I'm gonna take a shower. This is fun. This is a gross one. All right, friends. Till next time.
All right, stay cool, everybody.
Stay cool.
Bye. What you know about the streets? What you know about Belize? What you know about faking your own heart attack just to ditch the police? Cardiac. What you know about privacy? I got a bad bitch on side of me. I got the FBI eyeing me. See you. All of these hackers are trying me. Trying to get them a peek. Trying to get all on my Twitter for that coin of the week. I got China trying to ban every time that I speak. And now we got Trump. Bet you wish you voted for me. I got an arsenal. A bunch of big guns, drugs, and some cars to pull. Cars holes with the crypto paid in full. A bunch of hating motherfuckers writing articles about McAfee, John. McAfee, John. McAfee, John. Don't fuck with my dogs, Woo! Crypto flipping, woo! In the lab just mixing, woo! You gon' see my vision, got hoes shooting at me and they just keep missing. McAfee, John. McAfee, John. McAfee, John. Don't fuck with my dogs, Woo! Crypto flipping, woo! In the lab just mixing, woo! You gon' see my vision, got hoes shooting at me and they just keep missing. Woo! Some people think I'm psychotic. I'm riding something exotic. I got no need for a rubber. I'm whipping up antibiotics.